Today we're going to take a closer look at my new favorite knife from Helle, the Helle Nordlys. I'm going to show you why I think this is my favorite all-round knife in my knife collection. A perfect all-round knife is so much more than just a bushcraft knife. It's a knife you can use for everything. You want it to rest in your hand without any hot spots. You want it to feel comfortable to use in dry and wet conditions. You want it to hang from your belt or your loop without being too heavy or too intrusive. The Helle Nordlys is the little brother to the award-winning and really popular Helle Nord knife. It has a little bit thinner blade. It is much more practical and much more usable in everyday tasks. And I'm going to show you a little bit more about that later on in this video. But first of all, I want to talk a little bit more about Helle and what Helle is. Here on the west coast of Norway, right north of Bergen, surrounded by beautiful nature, there's a little town called Holmedal. And here you can find the Helle knife factory. They have been making old traditional Scandinavian knives since 1932 and are hugely popular, not only in Norway, but international by huntsmen, farmers, fishermen, and outdoor people. There is not many traditional knife makers left here in Norway, and I find it particularly interesting to see that a Norwegian brand is so popular or make so high quality tools in these modern times. There is much more to be learned about Helle and their knives, and I highly recommend you all to go in and try to investigate that more for your own. They also have a really interesting story about their old Viking knife and the old lady in black. They found a Viking grave underneath the factory, but that is a story for another time. But I can highly recommend you to visit the factory if you're ever on the west coast of Norway. A great test of a knife is how well it handles fishing. When you catch fish in various sizes, you want a knife that don't slip in your hand while gutting the fish. Another great test is to see how well it can make boneless filet out of some small fish. Yes, my technique is probably a little bit rusty, but I'm really impressed how well this knife design handles this task. Okay. Another and typical problem with most bushcraft knives is their blade thickness. This makes them better for batoning wood and less suitable for chopping vegetables or preparing food. My experience is that approximately 3 mm is the perfect in-between. With a little bit less thickness in the blade, makes it much more suitable to handle most tasks, and it's also enough to be a good wood chopper. But for me and how I use my knife, the hardest and most important test is how well it will carve a spoon. Most knives can do this task if you have the skill level, but there is just a way the knife feels in the hand, how it carves, no strains to the arms and the angle of the grind. Everything just comes together perfectly. And it just makes some knives stand out more than others. And for the size, I have never had a better all-round knife for this task, and I have a collection of about 200 knives. And yes, it will strike a fire rod, but I normally don't use my knives for this task. There will always be tools that are better suited for one particular task. But sometimes you find a tool good or great enough to replace other tools you have, and this time I have found the jack of all trades. And it makes me extra proud that it is from a Norwegian brand. Well done, Helle. Thank you.